hundreds of eyes in the sky looking for that incoming Messerschmitt spotted these strange luminescent balls, and they all disappeared after World War II. The same in the Pacific. After the end of World War II, Britain actually went in and took the continuous wave radar technology from Germany and fitted it into a laboratory. Where did they do it? It was about 2 miles from a place called Rendlesham Forest, at a place called Bawdsey Manor, where they developed continuous wave radar to produce plasma effects and early manifestation of directed energy weapons. I think that's a very convincing argument.
Chris Lado, welcome to Lado Files.
Welcome to Lado Files. I have a very exciting show today. I have Professor Simon Holland. He's a YouTuber. I've been watching him actually for several years now, as long as my show has been going on. And he is known in the UFO community, UAP community, as a debunker. And we were chatting a little before here, but that's the first question, Simon. Do you consider yourself a debunker?
I don't. I am very much a believer in the highly strange, but I want scientific proof. I don't think we're going to get disclosure from the very people who don't want to disclose stuff. We want real evidence. We want citizen science. We want international, non-political science to actually look at stuff. And my real point about flying saucers, UFOs, and today UAP is that about 80% aren't really strange. They're things that we can identify, and I just want to cut through that and focus on that remaining 20%. And what's interesting, why is it 20? Excuse me. Why is it 20? Because the 20% mainly consists of stuff that your government, your military, don't actually want to tell you about, leaving then a very small remainder of the highly strange, which I have actually had evidence does exist. It really is. And that's what I want to do. I want to cut through the belief that everything is alien and focus on the facts, the science of what's left, and to look at the stuff behind the curtain, not exposing national security, national secrets, not exposing military, but looking at the science of what's actually possible, the advanced physics. And I could be seen as a debunker, but I'm not. I just want to cut through the bollocks and reveal the truth. So it's a real pleasure to be here, Chris. You've certainly had very, very interesting, strange things that you found and have investigated fascinatingly, just like you. I've also watched your channel since you started YouTube, and it's great. So no, I think it needs people like you and I and the community on YouTube as citizen scientists to actually be open-minded to what's really out there and not be too believing in everything is possibly strange. Let's actually find the really strange stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree, Simon. Great to have you on the show. And
thank you. Yeah,
I really wish there was a lot less vitriol online. I waded in again to the MH370, whatever saga,
right.
And
right.
There's amazingly there's proof that comes out. But you mentioned here, and as we were talking before initially, is that you never think disclosure will come from the people who currently hold the power. In that sense, they would, if it's true, right, and all the evidence that we're talking about here points to it being at least true, or some of the evidence, then that would mean that they would have immense power and capability to change at least a few key things. And that's why I'm interested in things like 370. I know the community gets very upset, or people in the community get upset, but all it would take for that case is one person to fake one thing, and that just seems like, in my brain, that's a perfect case where instances like the CIA can make a big change on public perception, right? If it's a lot of people, hundreds of people, I think it's quite difficult maybe to make that change. But if it's really just one person comes up with one piece of fake material, kind of reminds me of Iraq. You know, the weapons of mass destruction. We have the one piece of intel saying that they have weapons of
Right.
mass destruction, and then that
Right.
piece of intelligence gets spread around, and now everybody thinks, oh, hey, we have weapons of mass destruction. It seems like, at least there's been proof in the past, the CIA has been involved in changing public perception. So we were talking previous to this, Simon, and basically your argument is, or your belief, from what I understood, is you don't think we'll get any disclosure, at least information from the current holders of the information. And one of the reasons I waded into MH370, you know, inadvertently or mistakenly, if you will, is because it would only take one person to really cause that, only one person to fake that one video, and now they can change public perception. And in this environment, I feel limited. Like, I don't want to look into MH370 because I'll get so much vitriol. So it seems like it could be, this is how the disinformation campaign, the stigma works, is that you just have one piece of evidence that everyone clams on, which could be fake or not. And now they can, with a lot of vitriol, point at people. So I'm very happy to have us just talking.
Yes.
You know, maybe on opposite sides. I don't even think we're on opposite sides
No.
of the actual viewpoint. So I guess what?
Oh, no, absolutely far from it, Chris. Your work is excellent, and the vitriol from the so-called UFO community is so misplaced and misguided, because I think they need to be very open-minded, and I think there's a lot of people like you, hopefully myself, and people I'm associated with, who are really looking hard for, you know, for real evidence. And as you say, the whole UFO story has been manipulated. It goes back to War of the Worlds, when that incredible, powerful broadcast changed America. If it did, really, that was quite a debate. And people were worried that aliens had actually landed. Somebody said, hang on a minute, that's a powerful argument. And I think the classic "it's a flying saucer" has been used by governments, by military during the stealth era of Cold War. People who saw stuff were often told it was a flying saucer to make them look foolish and to shut them up. So I think government do use the UFO word and the UFO community, and I think we need to cut through that crap. And I also don't believe in any way that they're the right people to actually disclose anything. I think they have the power, the law, and the vested interest in protecting what they know, and so do large defense corporations. Actually, they're not going to tell us. It's actually either going to be stuff that they want to keep secret, stuff they should keep secret. And I think any real truth is going to come from you, the audience, citizens, and scientists. And just the word disclosure makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, because why would they disclose anything? Now, separately, I'd like to say I'd like more transparency in government generally, and I think transparency from defense contractors, but they're very protected, and transparency from military of things that they can share, and I respect things that they can't share. But disclosure, we need to do that ourselves.
What do you think the best case is for disclosure? You know, we'll talk about your cases. I think some of them compelling arguments for ionized air and gas. But before we get into those, what is your most compelling evidence? You know, why are you interested in this in the first place? You know, why do you think it's a possibility?
Thanks for asking that, Chris, because that actually goes back to who I really am. The professor name is a nickname because of my wild hair. I'm actually a filmmaker. I worked in broadcast television, PBS, BBC for many years. That's who I originally first worked for. And here's an interesting thing. None of them would touch a flying saucer with a barge pole. Of course not. So I grew up very much in the science filmmaking world, where you wouldn't even go there. But something happened, and that's called Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England. USAF, US Air Force Europe, 2 bases, Cold War, Bentwaters, and the very mysterious Woodbridge in the very beautiful county of Suffolk, England, where something strange happened. All I can tell you is when I dug into it, asking big picture questions and meeting US Air Force retired John Burroughs, who did encounter something strange, I realized something happened. Nick Pope from the MOD clearly said at the time, and continues to say, if you understand what really happened at Rendlesham Forest, you understand UAP. Now that's quite an interesting, Nick knows what happened. Margaret Thatcher, ex-Prime Minister of Britain, while asked about Rendlesham Forest, why would she know? It's a small county north of London. She knew all about Rendlesham Forest incident, and she told a UFO reporter, researcher, it wasn't aliens. And the second statement, she said, you can't tell the people. Now, I now understand why she said that, because working on the Rendlesham Forest case absolutely changed my mind. They really saw something. John Burroughs nearly died. US Air Force security guard dog. It was a sergeant. He was in his 20s, went out, and his heart, his very DNA, his eyes, his brain, his whole body was disrupted. Now, it could have been just anything that he encountered. But let me tell you one thing about what we are about to reveal in a really interesting film, is that John Burroughs' case was the most highly classified piece of medical records ever. The CIA medical doctor told me that there are only 3 medical cases in the US that are so classified very few people have access to it. The JFK assassination real body information, what killed Adolf Hitler, and somebody called John Burroughs, US Air Force Rendlesham. And something happened to him. He's of great interest to Wright Patterson medical experts. He's of great interest to lots of people because he experienced something that is real. He still exists. He's still alive. He's reasonably healthy. He's aging like I am, but he holds the key to actually understanding. And when I heard that, and now I know really kind of what happened, the highly strange is out there. The highly strange is complex, and it's not what you think. And hopefully, when we find a way of revealing that in a mega important way, you'll see it here on YouTube. It's going to be a cracking story. And Chris, wow, you have to be involved in it as a U.S. Air Force person.
That's amazing. Yeah, I just I did an interview with Gary Hesseltine. I'm sure
right.
you've seen him, and it seems like there is a lot of drama in this case. It's been going on for so many decades.
Right.
Have you read his book, Non-Human?
Yeah, of course. No, lots of people have had, let me say, lots of people have really looked into Rendlesham Forest incident because it does hold a lot of keys. There's also, very interestingly, a lot of misinformation about lighthouses, about SAS revenge raids and things. But here's how I approached it. Asking the obvious big picture questions, who, what, where, when, and why, like any reporter would do. I'll just tell you just one thing. When you ask the question where, well, the answer is obviously Rendlesham Forest. It's a small forest in Suffolk in eastern England. Oh, no, it's not. Start looking at what is around Rendlesham Heath, and you start revealing Britain's most secret test site, Britain's largest nuclear power station, Britain's radar research lab, Marconi headquarters, in a circle, and in the center is a small piece of scrubby woodland between 2 US Air Force bases with nuclear weapons, highly secure, called Bentwaters and Woodbridge. What actually happened in that piece of scrubby woodland between the 2 perimeter fences is about where, and more will be revealed. Where?
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this Cable Green? I've heard of cable green coming out as a
Yeah,
as a
the word
documentary.
cable green is very interesting. Cable green is the local name for the actual place that most of the apparitions and the things in the sky were seen and things possibly landed. Oh, I'm maybe giving the game away here. Something might have hit the ground. Yeah, it's just a local area. It's a sub place inside the bigger area, which is tiny, by the way, called Rendlesham Forest. It's just the area between Woodbridge and Bentwaters. It's very unpopulated by British residents. There's a few public roads through it, but Cable Green is the actual place. And it's good to focus on that name if you know the actual area. Yeah, no, it's a relevant name.
Yeah, I think Rendlesham is really huge and complex. I didn't realize how big it was. It was multiple nights, and now they're arguing up to 4 nights.
Longer.
When I talked to Gary Hesseltine, he brought up a case from a year before it.
Yeah.
A year before, they actually had in the same general area kind of another strange incident. So it's just
No, there's
amazing.
lots of. That's a very big part of the story. Gary's absolutely right. Thank you, Gary. But the main thing that people don't realize is it wasn't Boxing Day, December the 26th, 1980. It had been going on for weeks. Eastern England radar know all about it. Orford Ness test range know all about it. The continuous wave radar, part of the British defense system at Bawdsey, they know a lot about it. Yeah, no, there was a lot going on. The Royal Navy were in the North Sea at the time doing something related. What happened at Rendlesham Forest is a very, very interesting story. We have a slight issue with it. John Burroughs is completely out there. Tell the people. All I can say is right now, I wish we'd published what really happened in the 1990s when the Cold War was just over and the West had won effectively, and the fall of the USSR. Today, some of what actually did happen at Rendlesham Forest is actually more sensitive because of the countries involved than it was in the 1990s. So it's a bit of a sticking point, but we are going to find a way of actually revealing to the public the technology, the highly strange that did occur, and the political shenanigans that actually the bigger picture of what they were doing in Suffolk.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
That's awesome, Simon. Yeah, so I'll wait. I do have a lot of questions on that, but hopefully,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would love
good.
to work on that. I would love to work on Rendlesham. I've never been. I'd love to. Yeah, any way I could get involved would be great.
Well, when the information comes out, and we've drip fed. We've been doing this kind of very interesting. John Burroughs is working with James Worrow, who's an excellent science researcher, and wrote a great book called The Weaponization of UAP. In that book, most of the answers are actually contained in that book. But we have found extra information to actually prove what they claimed is true. And it's a fascinating story. The way I'm working on it for them, I knew nothing about it, is looking at the science, the weaponization of physics, the British connection, which can't be ignored, the US Air Force and the DoD connection to what actually happened. And I keep saying this, the highly strange element, which is related to the history of the area, which is fascinating. It's a complex story, but it's also when we reveal the true nature of what happened, you will understand the technology and what they were actually trying to do and did.
Wow. And I guess I have to ask then, what is your belief on what the phenomena is, or speculation, obviously at this point?
No, I can come out and actually tell you right now what the phenomenon is, which is a big reveal. The phenomenon is exactly the Condon report. It's 80% man-made and 20% highly strange. It's a combination of the two. How they interface is a really interesting question and goes on to this happened in 1980, goes on to reveal a new, interesting, bigger picture to UAP phenomenon today and the weaponization of the highly strange. I'm saying a lot.
Yes. Is that? Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're saying there's a bigger picture. I kind of feel this as well. Obviously,
Yeah.
my own argument is that we're in a larger ecosystem that we just don't yet fully understand. So that's what I would think.
No, no, absolutely. And they're not necessarily aliens, but there's forces of nature, there's forces in the universe which we don't have the ability easily to perceive. As a pilot, you will know you don't fly by the seat of your pants. You trust your instruments because our senses, our eyes, our inner ear, and the seat of our pants lie to us. And we're very bad as humans at understanding the highly strange. We also dismiss things that we don't understand because we don't have the words in our brain to describe them. But the highly strange has been exploited in the same way that a lot of 20th century advanced physics has been exploited. And that really revealed to me the true nature of the story of Foo Fighters. And I know you're very interested in that. Maybe we can talk about some of the background to why the Foo Fighters are related to the UAPs of today.
Yeah, definitely. So the Foo Fighters.
Right.
Yeah, can you just give a summary? What do you think the Foo Fighters were or are?
Well, first of all, Foo Fighters was a name given to strange phenomenon, glowing balls of light seen over Europe and in the Pacific. Only during World War II. They started at the beginning of World War II and they abruptly ended after World War II. Now, the UFO community is going to jump on me and say, what about all the others? Well, yeah, there's lots of glowing balls in the sky before World War II, and there's glowing balls in the sky today. But the actual nature of the Foo Fighters are unique, and that's all I'm talking about. Every case needs to be looked at separately. One UFO is not Aunt Mary's UFO in Wisconsin. They all should be separately assessed. So just talking about Foo Fighters, absolutely, they started in Europe and in the Far East, in the Japan area, the Pacific area, during and only lasted through World War II. Now, first of all, that's an interesting connection because what's the connection with Pacific states, Japan and Germany? Oh, well, of course, they're the same. They were part of this alliance called the Axis powers, and Germany shared with them technology. And when we looked at the technology that Germany was probably using, we discovered that they were using a type of radar system called continuous wave radar, which is very different from modern American and British radar, which uses microwave technology and magnetrons and pulses, and a single dish to send, listen, and receive on a single dish. The Germans used a very different type of technology where they had two dishes. They had a continuous wave, which they pumped into the sky, and a separate dish for looking for continuous returns. Very accurate, really great, but very high powered. And what was happening is that this CW, or continuous wave, German only and shared with Japan radar system, tended to occasionally ionize the exhaust plumes of Allied high level flight levels bombers exhaust. The exhaust gases coming out of a reciprocating engine, of course, in World War II, is partially ionized out of the exhaust stack. When it mixes with oxygen and is energized by a focused beam of energy from these German radars, the balls seem to be under intelligent control. They were. Hans was actually moving the radar dish and following the aircraft. Occasionally they flew off and followed other aircraft. Yes, he did that. Occasionally they disappeared. Yes, they switched them off and looked somewhere else. it seems that the Foo Fighter technology is related to this specific German and shared with Japanese technology, not related to earlier, not related to later balls in the sky. And the real clincher was when the Foo Fighters were first seen, Winston Churchill, Henry Tizard, and the Allies working in headquarters in London absolutely crapped themselves because they knew what it was. They suspected that Germany had a directed energy weapon, and they thought it was something that it wasn't. It turns out that the Germans probably didn't even know it was a side effect of their continuous wave radar. A lot of Germans who were interrogated after World War II tended to exaggerate about Nazi technology, and none of them mentioned it because they couldn't see it. Only the young men in the B-17s and the Lancasters, hundreds of eyes in the sky looking for that incoming Messerschmitt, spotted these strange luminescent balls, and they all disappeared after World War II. The same in the Pacific. After the end of World War II, Britain actually went in and took the continuous wave radar technology from Germany and fitted it into a laboratory. Where did they do it? It was about 2 miles from a place called Rendlesham Forest, at a place called Bawdsey Manor, where they developed continuous wave radar to produce plasma effects and early manifestation of directed energy weapons. I think that's a very convincing argument.
So that is interesting. So the argument is they had these high power radar systems, and so when they when they basically lit up the incoming bombers, it would put out these orbs, right? It would ionize the exhaust plumes. That's what I didn't understand. So if it's a different plane, right, it's further away. How do they see their own exhaust plume? I guess if it's at their 90, what can I see?
Yeah, I'm with you.
They're seeing like their wingman exhaust plume. There's exhaust in the air, and somehow it's hitting.
Yeah, the exhaust plume is obviously a dissipating gas behind and in parallel in the large formation. And wherever the beam is generally looking at this formation of bombers, between the aircraft, which is now full of activated hydrocarbons in air. Now, the CW radar is possible to ionize air itself, but it needs a lot more energy. I think that's an important point to make. It can potentially actually ionize all the normal atmosphere, but it's much easier to ionize the atomized air exhaust of a bomber's engine or a fighter's engine. And so they tended to trail formations or pop up between formations, as you'd say, we'd see it off the wing, and in fact your leading aircraft would be spewing out something which became temporarily ionized. Can I just tell you a bit of physics? And I think this really is interesting. One of the questions that I've often asked is, how do you make light? It's such a great question. It's like, why is the sky blue? How do you make light? Light is made when energy makes an atom energized and puts electrons up to a higher state of play. That does nothing. They're quite happy to be at that higher or even ionized state of play. But when they return, as they want to the stable altitude of a stable orbit, they have to throw away energy. Think of an airplane descending to land. Throttle back. You have to reduce power. You have to do something to descend. The ionized or the energetic electron, when snapping back to a lower orbit, throws away something. It's called a photon. And that's the only way that light is mainly made. Even our sun does that. It's the photons, it's the energy gets thrown away when things are recombining. If you understand that, and suddenly you've got, lots of reasons why plasma, ionized gas, is continually turbulent. is ionizing, separating, and then recombining, because that's what it wants to do. And as it's recombining, it glows. And the color of it can vary depending on the energy, how fast it recombines, and the energy levels of the electron of whatever's been ionized produces different colors. It doesn't have to be yellow, often blue. It can even be jet black, which is very interesting. But ionized gas recombining produces photons. Photons look like Foo Fighters. Foo Fighters follow aircraft. Ionized plasma is a weapon.
Yeah, I think it is compelling. I tend to think of 80-20, the 80%, 20%.
Right.
How do you describe Eric Delgado? Did you happen to see my interview? I did an interview. It's worth looking up just for
I have to look at
this
it.
case. He's a commercial pilot. He has
Right.
4 or 5 decades flying airplanes.
Yeah.
And flying over Mexico back to the U.S., he videoed for 8 minutes right next to his plane this, Foo Fighter, if you will. It's a white sphere, And he says when he first noticed it, it actually flew down from the sky. He says from space, essentially, paused in front of his jet slightly. And then, a lighthouse, we mentioned a lighthouse there.
Right.
A lighthouse-like light scanned the plane, he said. It started at the front like a spotlight.
Wow.
Scanned down the plane and then moved to right, left of the plane where he videoed it. Yeah, definitely check out that interview because it seems amazing.
I am going to check it out. I don't know Eric. That is a fantastic sighting. Actually, having the video evidence of what he
8 minutes.
saw.
Yeah, he had 8 minutes.
I will check out your previous video. And his interview. Oh, that's fascinating. No, that kind of evidence. You as a pilot, you are very trained at focusing on what you actually recognize and what you can see and what your sensors are seeing. But you can easily be confused. How many pilots have seen Venus and think it's an oncoming landing light? I certainly, as a pilot,
but yeah, you're definitely confused. Like,
yeah,
Delgado said he thought it was another plane initially. Because he thought it was a landing light, like normally
sure.
If it was that bright. You're confused all the time flying. Every flight, I think something, you're always confirming, is that correct? Is that correct? But you're confused a lot. For sure.
It's amazing how, as you say, every flight. My classic story was landing into Milwaukee. It's maybe a couple of 100 miles north of O'Hare on a clear February night. And there was an aircraft coming straight for me, which I confirmed through tower traffic. And they said, no, carry on, clear to land. And I said, I can see a landing light. And they say, you are seeing the landing light of an international large heavy at O'Hare. Oh. I went, crap, it's 200 miles away. And of course, you go into slightly avoidance mode, and you can't trust your eyes because you're looking for something like that, which might be a conflict, as you well know.
Yeah, and I find the more we get out of the human normal environment, because I'm pretty sure we weren't designed to fly in planes and use night vision goggles to look in these other spectrums. And that's really where you get the biggest variance.
Oh, is it?
That happens all the time. Yeah, we had pilots, you're training new pilots or even more experienced pilots to fly at night in formation. And there's many stories of pilots, and I've seen it flying off, and I've done it, flying off a commercial airliner that's like 50 miles away rather than your wingman, who's just a mile and a half. There's just blinking lights out there. So what'll happen, you have to laugh when it happens. You'll just see there'll be like number 4. There's usually 4 guys in a 4-ship, and the 4th is the newest. He's usually the rookie. So it's always, once in a while, you see number 4 just flying off into nowhere, and you're like, what are you doing?
Where you going?
But they will get latched on to these lights. So yeah, for sure, you're not going to see.
Oh, that's fantastic story. So they could actually track a distant airliner's navigation lights as a point of reference for formation.
Because there's an interesting thing in the night vision realm. The white lights are very, very bright. So a white light at 200 miles will look exactly the same or brighter than a green or red light at like 1 mile, like literally 1 mile. It's a huge. Yeah.
Oh, right. Well, that's a failure a bit of the interface, isn't it? Really, that yeah, if there's a correlation between distant and yeah, no, that doesn't work, does it?
It's a
You
huge
need
issue. No, I
better
mean,
software.
thousands of people have died because of that night vision goggle. That issue, human factors. I did my master's. Additional
Right.
was on human factors in aviation. Was one part of it, and so they've lost so many people. All your night vision goggle training is all about these issues, these human factor issues, and seeing
Good.
things at night. So I could. It is a compelling argument, your ionization argument. Do you have any proof, or is there any proof?
Well, the proof really comes post World War II when Britain. Here's a great question I often ask. You know, at the end of World War II, the spoils of war, the German assets were split, and it's well known that the United States, through Operation Paperclip, got most of the very interesting German scientists, not only in aerospace but also in medical fields. And which is a bit scary. The Russians very much took the already constructed V2s, and that gave them a real leg up in the early space race. They had their rockets. What did Britain take after World War II? Do you know the answer to that, Chris, or can I tell you?
Yeah. Let me know, please.
Well, yeah, because it's just not very well known. They took two things. First of all, they took something called HTP, high test peroxide, which is an oxidizing agent, which the Royal Navy wanted for submarines and for torpedoes. And it turned out to be a nightmare type of chemical, although it's effective. And the second thing they took was advanced radar technology, which they moved to a place called Bawdsey Manor in Suffolk and experimented with the very different approach that the Germans had to direct radio direction finding, RDF, which later became radar. But they were very interested because of a long history of Britain looking at directed energy weapons and not really making a successful one. They thought that a key to understanding plasma, and again, I go back to the Condign report, the big takeaway message of Dr. Ron Haddow, the man who wrote the Condign report, is you need to understand one word, plasma. And that's because Britain is very, very interested in that technology. They're also very interested in metamaterials, materials that actually alter EM wavelengths and frequencies. One of the earliest metamaterials was built in Britain, which was a way of diffracting and deflecting, not absorbing microwave radar energy, which led to stealth aircraft skins, first of all paints and then actual structural skins. And that's material science. And Britain, after World War II, was a hotbed of advanced physics. And a lot of it was being focused into weaponization. And the directed energy weapon lab just happened to be down the road from Rendlesham Forest.
Of course.
Of course. Yeah. And the
Excellent.
computing center was at Martlesham Heath, and the power supply is Sizewell A nuclear power station, and it was all tested at Orford Ness.
It sounds like the U.S. may have gotten spaceships, if you believe David Grush's account, from Italy, and we got the scientists, all the scientists. So we got all the spoils, and Britain got just two things. You said. That's all.
Well, the two things they also got some people, but they were very wary of the people. They didn't really like. There's not very many to this day ex-German Nazi scientists actually worked in Britain. Most of them went to the US. But the two things that they really wanted, and I've got photographs of them going to the radar lab in Dresden, which is quite interesting because of the history of Dresden and carpet bombing. But the Dresden lab was absolutely brought back piecemeal to Bawdsey Manor, Suffolk, because it was looking. Germans had horrible ideas. They looked at focused X-ray weapons that would kill pilots and leave aircraft. They certainly, there's evidence that they had electromagnetic beams that would disrupt electromagnetic cockpit instruments, would go haywire, specifically over this lab, and all of that was jumped on by the United Kingdom, Britain, after World War II, and brought back and developed.
Developed. Yeah, that reminds me of lasers. You know, if you use
Oh,
high-powered
yeah.
lasers, you can
Right.
blind pilot. And our targeting pods, our lasers are actually can blind, so we're very careful in air-to-air engagements, etc.
Oh, the laser story is fantastic. I mean, I just love that story. You know, if a kid shines a laser pointer at an aircraft, it's a really serious thing, but it's not just a serious offense. In the United States, it's a federal crime. You get locked up for a prank, although it's a dangerous prank. It's actually completely forbidden because of the history of lasers and aviation. It goes back to a story with Oliver North selling high-powered lasers into Central America. That's a fantastic story because it was well known. A passive guerrilla warfare way of blinding pilots is to shine lasers at cockpits. And that became very, very bad and taken very seriously and is a serious thing. I mean, to this day, people, if you've got kids or kids are listening, do not play with lasers anywhere near an airplane. Not only is it stupid, dangerous, but if you get caught, it's a really serious offense because of the history of the weaponization of lasers. And, you know, Chris, you know how dangerous it is.
Yeah, when I was in Phoenix, actually, there was some issue where someone was, when we were coming back at night, someone was shining a green laser at the planes, actually, but they would shut it off before we could target them. But we located them, actually. So when finally they saw where it's coming and were able to get our sensors down and look at the house, and they went to his house, actually. The OSI went to his house.
Straight there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the Nimitz when we were talking before.
Yes.
And I'd love to hear the debunking, or at least arguments on both sides, you know.
Right.
My whole point is to get to the truth.
No debunk zone. No. What actually happened? I have the greatest respect, and part of the story of, let's say, the Nimitz disclosure videos, which are very interesting, why and how and who and where they were disclosed. But let's just look at one of them, and that is the Commander David Fravor sighting. And I specifically, first of all, want to ask you, Chris, as a retired U.S. Air Force training pilot and also a trained pilot in the U.S. FAA system, about special use airspace. Now, do you confirm that Commander David Fravor and the Nimitz were in something called an special use airspace?
Yeah,
as far as you know. Yeah,
definitely. So off the West Coast is these large areas, and I'd have to review it again. I don't remember exactly, because they were doing a very big area mission. You know, so they had multiple ships, at least I believe so, 2 ships, the carrier and the Aegis that we know about. I bet there was other ones involved. There was also submarines. So they had a very large area, and they're defending the ship. So they link together some airspaces, you know. So when you're planning a mission, if you're the schedulers, you have to schedule, you have to plan, and make sure that you have all those airspaces scheduled. So what they'll do is they'll combine all these different airspaces.
Right.
So you have 2 different types that I know. Again, I haven't flown in the U.S. in a while, but basically you have MOAs, which are military operating areas, and from what I understand is anyone can fly into those areas.
Right.
So anyone can go through, and it's on us as the military to avoid those planes. So yeah, many times I've had issues where we're fighting a training exercise, and a doctor from California or some airplanes flying through right through the middle of the fight. Very dangerous.
Stupid.
Yeah. I didn't know, and we just set. We know where they are with our radar. We set a bubble around them, or the easiest is just an altitude. If they're at 10,000, okay, we'll stay above 11,000 feet and just know that the plane's over there. So that's a MOA. There's also other areas. I believe Whiskey 72. I believe that's a warning area.
Right.
And those they're smaller, obviously, because the military owns those, and normally it's because they're shooting missiles through there. They're launching things. They're doing dangerous things, and they've our government has said, hey, you can't go into that area. So I'm not sure the mix of it. I know that that's a lot of airspace over there with the islands. They use the islands for weapons bombing. I think the Navy, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on out there that the Navy does. There's underwater ranges like submarines. So that whole area over there is a mix of all these kind of airspaces.
That's exactly what I believe. And just again, let me ask you this question. Why? Because they want to protect the safety of the pilots using the MOA special use airspace as a general term, and to have no conflicts with Part 91 commercial aircraft or GA. It's purely for safety. These are published, they're on charts, and always with special use airspace, on the chart, there is a frequency called a controlling authority. There's one frequency which you can, and also sensors and other towers will know when these areas are active, like a MOA, special use airspace is being used, and of course restricted and warning areas are continually active. But that controlling authority needs to talk to every single mixed use person, whether it's the doctor in the Bonanza or you guys in your F-16 doing flame out spiral descents. You need to be in two-way communication with the controlling authority. And that's what I think is my next question to you. And you've already answered it in a way. You can have mixed multiple parties using a military operational area as long as they're all in two-way communication with whoever is in the overall control and positive radar contact, if you said squawk code or whatever. So I think what might have happened in the David Fravor incident is when the Navy were doing their exercise in their combined special use and Navy airspace, something went into that airspace, and the first thing they need to do, they saw it, was, are they communicating? No. Let's send somebody with eyes to actually check who the Bonanza or these strange things they kept on seeing are. And they sent Commander Fravor to go and check what wasn't in communication with the controlling authority during the Nimitz exercises. And that's where he saw the Tic Tac. I think that's very interesting that whatever it was wasn't talking. But it's also, what do you think of this? Answer this question, Chris. Is it possible that you could have multiple operations in a military operation area simultaneously if they're all talking to each other?
If they're all talking, yeah, I would consider it one single operation.
Right.
Like, I'll give an example at Red Flag.
Yes.
We would do the mass big air fight, where you're going into some country again.
Oh, right.
But then what wouldn't work with that is like a close air support war. They don't really mix. You can't do Iraq on day one and Afghanistan on day 1000,
right,
together. But you can if you have separate kind of little scenarios. So we'll have the big air war going on, and then over here in the corner, we'll have the air to ground kind of close CAS fight, close air support kind of fight going on. Kind of integrated, but separate, yeah. But the idea is for sure you're going to be deconflicted in altitude and space,
and in communication. And so there's some controlling authority.
Space, everybody.
Yeah. I regularly, while living in Wisconsin, used to have to cross Voke Field, which is an Air National Guard training, mainly with F-16s. And the interesting thing, I would ask for transiting north to the south, given the squawk code, the tower would say there are F-16s doing maneuvers in the area, and the Army are currently doing drone testing a few miles to the west. So that's now me in my Cessna, F-16s doing whatever the F-16s do beautifully, and some non-manned Reaper drones over to the west, all in the same airspace, because we were all talking to each other. The F-16s, I believe, were at least looking for me. The drones totally ignored me, and I quickly transited through the airspace, but that was fine. So my scenario that I'm kind of working on is that the airspace that David Fravor was in that day or during the Nimitz encounter could also be open to defense contractors. If you read the NOTAM for that particular airspace, it says it can be used for advanced testing of advanced propulsion devices. And as you say, it actually includes submarine to space. It's a very large altitude area. I think it's possible that somebody else was using that airspace and actually was slightly being sneaky about being in control, or maybe David Fravor and the Navy weren't completely understanding what was actually going on in that airspace. Maybe they did know, but they didn't tell him. I don't know. But from what I kind of am getting adrift is it's possible that the Tic Tac was man-made. It seems to have some characteristics of an aerogel drone device, which was currently being tested. It's really pretty secret technology. And it certainly makes a lot of sense that multiple items were seen by the Princeton as part of the Nimitz. And maybe it was necessary for the chief Navy training officer, Commander David Fravor, and his wing person, Dietrich, to actually have eyes on the Tic Tac and the way that it moved and what it did, and the way that another one appeared at his CAP cap point, I think is very emblematic of something going on in multiple missions in the same airspace. But nobody's going to tell me that, but that's something that I'm very interested in. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so your argument is that it's still breakthrough tech, right? So you're not saying that you I guess you believe
Right.
or take David Fravor at his account that that's
Yeah.
what he saw, but you're arguing that it's U.S. technology, basically advanced tech, and they
Right.
were caught doing some sort of test, and then
Well, they were doing a test, and they actually wanted the Navy to see if they could do eyes in the actual human eyeballs on the craft. And then the only thing that David Fravor actually, if you look at his report, first of all, you have to remember David Fravor didn't film it. The Tic Tac was filmed later. It was a different pilot. But David Fravor's actual written report is really accurate, and he saw this object oscillating over the sea, and then it shot vertically. That fits a type of technology which is currently being developed. Whether it was that, I don't know. Sean Kirkpatrick. Now, Sean Kirkpatrick's very interesting. Not liked in the UFO community because he wants to dismiss a lot of things, and he wants to focus on the highly strange, but he wants to dismiss a lot of the missed sightings. He said this, a fantastic statement. He said when he went to the Hill, to the Capitol, and was asked, what are UAP? He said this. He said, I would love to tell you they're aliens because my job's over. I don't know what aliens are. I don't know what they're flying. They're probably not a national security risk. What I don't want to come back and tell you is they're not aliens, because that means they're one of two things. They're ours and you don't know about it, or they're an enemy technology and we don't know about it. So please let they be aliens, if you get what I'm saying. And I think they're not aliens.
Interesting. Yeah, I think they're both actually. That's mine.
Okay.
Integrated. I think. But yeah, that's my speculation is that it is related to aliens as non-Earth intelligence.
Yeah, non-human intelligence, I think, is very interesting. I think I was being I think people will jump on me for what I've just said. I think that it's more complicated than I made it seem, and I don't entirely agree with everything Sean Kirkpatrick said. I think he did a very bad PR exercise. I think he should have talked about the highly strange and not just dismissed it all. But I think his statement saying to the Hill that I wish they were aliens and I don't want to tell you they're ours is a very interesting statement from him. But I also agree with you, Chris, that I think there is highly strange out there. And I also think that the highly strange could be weaponized by us. Some of that technology might be in the hands of people who know a bit more about how it works, the physics of how it works, and maybe the stuff out there which appears highly strange because we don't understand how it works.
I guess last question here. What do you think that technology is? What is your speculation on what it is? Plasma. I've seen you mention plasma a lot. You also mentioned high strangeness.
Yeah, no. All right. So I think plasma is a key to unlocking some wavelengths and some frequencies of the highly strange. I think there is evidence that things, people, beings, non-human intelligence is out there. There's definite sightings that we can't explain. Personally, I think we as humans, we Earth living, very sensorily deprived human beings are very bad at seeing the giant electromagnetic spectrum. We're very bad at recognizing temporal things in time and space. We also live in 3 dimensions. So I think the universe is bigger. There's more questions to be answered. There's more stuff out there than we know. There's a great possibility that it is here. It might have always been here. It might be a visiting person. But that technology, those things have been studied. Those things are of great interest, because if you did understand how they work, who they are, and their technology, think of the advantage to your nation. And that's what David Grush is saying. Possibly he's true. I don't believe they're aluminum flying saucers. I think they're non-human intelligences. I think they're highly strange, but they're not in a hangar. They're more of a ephemeral concept of physics.
Wow. Okay.
Maybe.
I think we agree more than we disagree, actually, Simon.
Right.
It's amazing. Great to meet you. And
yeah,
interact with
great.
you. We'll definitely have you on the show again, and happy to
Sure.
talk again. I'm very interested in Rendlesham Forest for sure.
Yeah, I would love to involve you more in Rendlesham Forest. I think one of the things that the US Air Force need to know is John Burroughs is not the only person who has been injured. There's a whole bunch of people who have encountered frequencies and strangeness and man-made stuff who have been severely injured during their terms of duty. And I think John's a great person to expose what really might have been going on. So thank you, Chris.
Excellent. Well, thanks for your time, Simon, and thanks to everyone in the audience. Please check out Professor Simon on his YouTube channel. He has awesome videos. You see it there, the magic, why he has a popular YouTube channel. So check him out, and thank you for being here. Let us know in the comments any of your questions. Have a great day. Peace.
Ask questions, and Chris and I are very happy to answer them. I'm not a debunker. I believe in the highly strange. There's strange stuff out there, and we need proper answers. Thank you, Chris.
Excellent. All right. Have a great day. Peace.